it sounds to my ears something midway between Mick Ronson and Jimmy Page. It has a rock sound that moves along like a dancing horse. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles, you bastard. My name's John, and his name is Andy. Think of me when you close your eyes. Don't look back when you break all ties. Think of me when you're coming down. Don't look back when leaving town today. More that later. But first we have a track to listen to, selected by Brother Andy. What do you got?
Well, sir, we are going to be continuing our venture down the Queens of the Stone Age Boulevard. We wrapped up, I think the last track we did was off Rated R. So now we are moving on to Songs for the Deaf. And this track is called No One Knows. I assume you're not familiar with this track, right? You never heard this one?
Who knows?
Okay, well, you keep your secrets then, Gandalf. But yeah,
No.
let us go off and give it a spin and let us know what you've made of it.
Will do. Interesting start. Starts with quite stabbing guitar, and then it goes into this very quickly into this riff that, for me, it kind of sounds almost like a cross between, I don't know, Mick Ronson and Jimmy Page. There's a bit of that glam rock sort of pranciness to it, and I don't know in a derogatory way. It has that sort of almost it travels like those dancing horses. It's got a bit of a show off to it in a nice way. I really like that sound, so that's why I'm trying to make it sound as like a compliment. But yeah, it's interesting for Andy said a couple of episodes ago about his perception of glam rock and mine. It's just terminology, but it's quite different. But yeah, this sounds, it's got that sort of 70s sound to it. And then in comes your man, Josh, isn't it? There was this really nice, I don't know if this is the right term or not, harmonic note. There's a ding, it's almost like a chime at the end that was totally different into the range of the tonal range of the other stuff. I really liked that. It was just like, ting, captain is aboard the ship, and on he comes. He's singing in a way which is a slightly affected at the end of the line, so like he sort of lets the last word sort of drift off. He said something about there's rules, there's this, that, and those, and these, but nobody knows. So that's promising. Let's see how it goes from here.
We get these pills to swallow. How they stick in your throat. Tastes like gold. Oh, what you do to me. No one knows.
It's good. Right.
Larry.
I was just checking to see where it was going next. So yeah, so we get this. I don't know. If that's the chorus or what it is, but we go to this sort of falsetto tones, and the sort of the way the sort of I mean, think the melody goes. It's quite this sort of cod, heavy rock sort of sound. Not hugely keen on it, but in comes this the vocal monitor. Not hugely keen on that bit, but in comes this really heavy, dirty guitar that sounds great, and then the drums seem to kick to life because of this. And all the time they're doing these sort of fills and rolls and everything. And in the right channel there, the cymbals going away, really sort of persistently, like rain on a window pane. Sounds really good. Then we've obviously gone back into the verse, but let's see how this goes.
The desert of the mind with no hope. I follow. I drift along the ocean, dead lifeboats in the sun, and come on down, pleasantly caving in. Come on down, and I realize you.
Okay, we're also going to go around that bit again. Just to mention, the riff's really nice and it's really engaging. And it sort of trots along, pulling you with it. And then every now and then he'll just do something and reach for a note or just slightly morph it. So again, it's just slightly different every few lines, bars. Yeah, really nice and engaging. I really like it. It's quite simple, but yeah, it's got a great sound to it.
Heaven smile.
We're gonna have to do that a little bit again. That was like Beatles-esque, wasn't it? A condensed version, and then just the sort of flat line. But instead of Paul's bouncy vocals about getting out of bed, we've got this sort of bullfrog croaking bass line.
Heaven smiles above me. What a gift here below. But no one knows. Gift that you give to me. No one knows.
Ustedes que son padres de familias.
Buenas tardes, señoras y señoritas. Aquí está el DJ Héctor Bonifacio Echeverría Cervantes de la Cruz Arroyo Rojas. Esta es la radio Quetzalcóatl, la estación donde el rock vive y no muere. Vamos a escuchar un par de temas de Queens of the Stone Age. Primero vamos a escuchar Thirsted Gibbet. Qué música impresionante, temible y verdaderamente ahora. Van a ver, aquí va, aquí va, aquí va, aquí va.
I wonder if that was real, if that was a skit at the end, because it sounded real sort of. I'm not in a position to judge, but it sounded very sort of cod Mexican. You're dangerously close to Speedy Gonzalez territory there. So yeah, this is an interesting song. It's kind of like two sounds to it, as it were. There's the sort of jumpy, prancing sort of main guitar riff, and then the sort of heavier side of it, which comes in with all these drums. Those fills that second time were massive. I'm just trying to remember. I'm sure Dave Grohl played with these guys. I wonder if that's him, because it sounded like a student of Bonzo. There was a bit there. It was quite sort of Led Zeppelin in terms of like the guitars and all the drums coming together at once before it sort of cut out. It sounds superb. Really, really good drumming. I'm sure it must be Dave Grohl, because he's a big fan of Bonzo. But yeah, whatever. It's still great sounding. I really like both guitar sounds. I wasn't so keen on that falsetto voice where it goes with the heavy guitar, but that's just my preference. There's nothing wrong with it. But yeah, overall, very interesting song. Lyrics wise, not a clue. Bits and pieces here and there, but he was kind of throwing away the last word in a lot of his lines. Like it was almost just a vowel sound at the end. He says something about sticking in his throat, but it was like sticking in his throat. It was, yeah. So which made it hard to discern other stuff. But I'm not best at that anyway. Thankfully, we've got someone who does get the lyrics. Even better when he's looked them up. So he can tell us all about this song. Let's go back and chop it up with Andy.
Okay, so no one knows, but everyone wants to know what you think, John. What do you say?
So, song starts with these stabbing guitar riffs. The stabbing guitar riff, which quickly morphs into something that sounds to my ears something midway between Mick Ronson and Jimmy Page. It has a rock sound that moves along like a dancing horse. I shall explain. So a couple of episodes ago, we were discussing this, and you mentioned glam as a term, referencing the Cult's heavier sound, equating it to sort of hair metal, Motley Crue, etc. It's all just terminology. But I think of glam as that 70s sound, which has those great riffs, aren't quite as heavy as something along the lines of Zeppelin or Sabbath, but have that sort of, it's hard to describe, we'll call it a prancing quality, but there's a slight, very slight amount of preening to the sound of glam, like a peacock or a golden pheasant. And I do mean this in a complimentary way. They may not sound it, because I'm very fond of sort of glam, Bowie, glam, etc., Boland, and all the stuff from there. But there's amazing guitars and really sort of quite muscular riffs. But there's a little bit of glitter around the edges as well. And this is kind of mixed between the two. The way that sort of the riff goes, it's sort of a bit jumpy and a bit sort of, so you imagine someone sort of peacocking to it. But yeah, then so it continues on. And then there's a very pleasant, I don't know if I've got the right terminology here. I said this in the reaction. I'm going to call it a harmonic note, where it's just ting, like it's a chime completely separate and in the sort of the tonal range of the rest of the riff. And at that point, it comes in again later in the song. And then they do some things which are similar, but not quite, which are actually within the sort of tonal range where they sort of stretch. But anyway, this harmonic note comes in and it's like a chime. And it's like ping pong. Please welcome your singer, Josh, I think his name is. And he comes in with some fairly opaque lyrics, something about rules to follow and this, that, and the other, and pills to swallow, but they're sticking in his craw and they taste of gold. Yeah. Um, and the weird thing is he accentuates certain words. So I think he says throat, but it sounds more like thraw, and gold sounds like gaw. And to add to the mystery, he confirms, what you do to me, no one knows, which is underlined with the line also whispered in tandem to have a little bit of creepiness to it. So then we get a sort of stuttering couple of falsetto lines, which lead into this other part of the song. Okay, these two are replicated the way through, as I later learned. As it comes in, and again, this is how to explain the tone of his voice with the falsetto and the way the sort of the notes go slightly, I wouldn't say sharp, but uprising. That has a sort of hint of the sort of heavy rock about it, which is quite, it's been used before. But it introduces the second guitar sound, which is a much heavier, dirtier sound. And the sort of like billing, rattling sound of this seems to kickstart the drums in some way. And they do a quick equipment check. Yeah, every single piece is in place. Yeah. So we got these lovely traveling fills and rolls and counterpointing the sort of heady vocals, and it all fits together really nicely. We then skip back to the main riff. And this time it's accompanied by some gently, sort of almost wailing backing vocals. And he mentions journeying through the desert. And I'm struggling to pick up a lot of the words. He employs the same technique where he did before, where he seems to vocally fill it out, the syllables for the final word of each line, leaving them deboned, just a sort of a floppy vowel sound floating away. And he says, "I found it." It's just like there's no skeleton to the word. It's just floating out there, which is fine enough. It's just I don't know fully what he's saying, which I don't know the best of times anyway. So no hope there. But the whole thing to me feels like this movement and this traveling, and it's sort of like a bit mystic, and references to obviously the drugs before and the pills and the desert and stuff like that. So yeah, just really interesting. It creates an atmosphere without me knowing what the hell he's singing about. So that's a big tick. So yeah, and then also that's pleasing stray harmonic note returns, with more sort of choral moaning, as it were, and it does create this atmosphere over the guitar, which feels even more to me like the sort of cadence of a moving animal. Has that gait to it. Maybe it's a camel train, I don't know. But every so often, what they do, instead of that sort of a harmonic note, every so often they do a little inflection within the riff. So it's a repeating riff, but then they sort of stretch it or bend it a bit or just change it. Just it keeps it very interesting as it kind of reaches for a different note, which is part of the same family. And a couple of times it almost mimics that harmonic note, but it's nowhere near in terms of the tonal quality, but just really interesting. The falsetto section then returns, along with that guitar that sounds like heavy plant machinery clearing away some forest while workmen stand around nodding. It's got that nodding quality and the drums. And I have to say, the second time, the drums are even more. We get fill after fill after fill. The cymbals are splashing away in a right channel, and it's like the drumming of rain on a window pane. And then I get a little light bulb moment, because I do remember you telling me that Dave Grohl drummed for these guys at one point, and I was thinking to myself, the person who's doing this, the way that those toms are hit and those fills, sounds like a student of Bonzo, and I know that Dave Grohl has a huge affection for Mr. Bonham, and yeah, it does sound like him. So it may or may not be, but that sort of like pleased me, that thought anyway. So then we get a little section after it where it sounds like the rhythm section are almost playing hopscotch with the guitar. They're both bouncing from chalk square to chalk square. And this bit sounds like the most traditional heavy rock of the whole song. And it's not a criticism. It just this sounds like the most sort of bit that you could sort of trace back. Um, and it all breaks down to reveal this singular guitar sound. And I'm not sure if it's guitar or if it's a bass being played really high. It could be either.
It's a
Um,
bass.
it doesn't make much
That's the
difference. It's
silver
the same
drive, I
thing.
believe. Yeah.
Yeah. It's quickly joined by another guitar. Um, and it has that tone this time of a traditional like 70s guitar solo sound, that heavy soupy. I don't know what the words for it. I'll call it heavy soup. The sound, and you know what I mean. As soon as I say it, it does sound like heavy soup. Um, and the more drums are pounding away, and then this keyboard sound sort of tiptoes in. I sort of sensed it. There's this like synth bank of noise, and it becomes almost like strings, and it rises to a day in the life Beatles crescendo that cuts off just like that. But it's condensed down into a small amount of time. It's not
Yeah.
lengthening like the Beatles one. It's only a quarter of the time. But instead of revealing Paul's cheery tones about getting out of bed and dragging a comb across his head, we instead get a bullfrog bass croaking at us, and this segues back into the choppy guitar of the verse. Um, we get a few more ghostly moans, and no one knows because they don't. And then a couple of proper stabs, and then we're left with some Mexican radio skit that sounds straight out of the Speedy Gonzales playbook. I don't know what the hell that was about, but fair enough. So I enjoyed this. I think I enjoyed the choppy, what I would call 70s glammy type Mick Ronson sound and guitar bit better because I wasn't quite so keen on the, the vocal melody of the falsetto bit. And that's the only bit. If I took that out, I'd probably really like that. But I enjoy that. It's a very small criticism,
Mm.
to be honest with you, not to be taken that seriously, because I enjoyed the whole song. And it shows how the quality of this band, definitely from the fourth song I've heard now, theirs. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent, man. I'm glad you did. Yeah, this is I mean, it's hard. There's a lot of them, but it's one of my favorite songs by these guys. There's just so much going on in it rhythmically that is just absolutely enchanting and scratches so many of my rhythmic itches. So yeah, as we've mentioned, we've covered this band on the channel now a few times. So I'm not going to go, get too hemmed in with the going over of already canvassed terrain and try to focus just on this track and this album. But yeah, Songs for the Deaf is the third studio album by Queens of the Stone Age, released on August 27th, 2002 by Interscope Records. It features guest musicians, including Dave Grohl on drums, as well as the last Queens of the Stone Age album to feature Nick Oliveri on bass. The album is a loose concept album taking the listener on a drive through the California desert from Los Angeles to Joshua Tree, tuning into radio stations from town to town along the way, such as Banning and Chino Hills. So here we are, finding ourselves back in Joshua Tree again, John. Between this track and the upcoming but already recorded episode devoted to the Mekons, Lawrence of California, we're becoming regulars there. So yeah, Songs for the Deaf received critical acclaim and earned Queens of the Stone Age their first gold certification in the United States. 1 million copies were sold in Europe, earning a platinum certification from the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry in 2008. Tracks No One Knows, Go With the Flow, and First It Giveth were released as singles. And I'm really tempted to just, instead of moving on to the next album first, giving you Go With the Flow off this album as well, because it's another great, great track. But yeah, Songs for the Deaf was the first Queens of the Stone Age album that featured Dave Grohl of Nirvana and Foo Fighters on drums, who also toured with the band. He replaced Gene Troutman, who started working on other projects at the time. Grohl had admired Queens of the Stone Age since they opened for Foo Fighters, and he had wanted to appear on their previous album, Rated R. Guitarist Josh Homme, with whom he had been friends since 1992, while Homme was the guitarist for Caius, invited him to join in October of 2000. Grohl admitted that he had drummed, that he had not drummed for a long time, and added that fronting a band had become tiring. So I think this is right around the time where he started to dip into Queens of the Stone Age, and he started to dip into them Crooked Vultures, and he really wanted to, scratch that, need to drum itch of his. And I have to say, like, I've listened to everything that Dave Grohl has drummed on. I've listened to probably everything that Dave Grohl has done. This might be one of my favorite drumming performance by him. It is so good. It is so bombastic. The way he just beats the shit out of the Skins is very Bonzo-esque. And it's just a lot. The video is fun to watch, if not just to see him go at it on drums, which at the time felt like something you weren't ever going to see again, maybe because he had taken on this, like, I'm the singer, I'm the guitarist, I'm the songwriter for Foo Fighters thing. And it is, a good 10 years after, or so after Nirvana had disbanded and all that. So yeah, it was just so much fun. And the video is really fucking weird anyway, but it's also a lot of fun. So yeah, Songs for the Deaf was the last appearance on the Queens of the Stone Age record by Brendan McNichol on lap steel, and Gene Troutman, who I mentioned just a moment ago, who did provide drums on track 1 and track 8 of this album. It was also the last album to feature bassist and vocalist, as I mentioned before, Nick Oliveri, as a full-time member. He was fired following the tour. The album also included the first musical contribution to Queens of the Stone Age album by multi-instrumentalists Natasha Schneider and Elaine Johannes. Schneider and Johannes, alongside Songs to the Deaf touring recruits Joey Castillo and Troy Van Leeuwen of Failure and A Perfect Circle, would subsequently become full-time Queens of the Stone Age members and contribute to the follow-up albums Lullabies to Paralyze, which was released in 2005. And I think Troy Van Leeuwen, who you've now heard a lot of on this channel, is the old crow guy from the Mexicola Live from the Basement video, and the caveman-like drumming was Joey Castillo, who would also later join, even though they were playing a song from earlier in that catalog at the time. Rounding out the core recording lineup of Homme, Oliveri, and Grohl was singer-songwriter Mark Lanegan. Formerly of Screaming Trees, we've talked about him before a lot on our episodes devoted to these guys, as Lanegan was a contributing member in those earlier tracks that we canvassed on the channel. And obviously, Homme had toured with him previously, as we discussed. Lanegan joined the band as a full-time member in 2001 after having guested on the band's previous album, Rated R, and provided additional songwriting and lyrics in addition to lead vocals on several songs. This is the album by the band that featured 3 different lead singers. I think it's the last album to do that, actually. So we had songs performed obviously by Homme, but also bassist and vocalist Oliveri, and then Lanegan himself. Several songs on the album are reworked versions of tracks previously recorded and released in the Desert Sessions, a side project of Homme with various guest collaborators. The main riff for No One Knows comes from the Desert Session track Cold Sore Superstars. Grohl's drums were recorded in a small, dead-sounding isolation booth to create a tight, focused, and punchy kind of claustrophobic sound. To allow for greater flexibility in positioning microphones, the cymbals were recorded separately. To achieve this, Grohl performed each song twice. For the initial pass without cymbals, he hit electronic cymbal pads, then repeated the performance with real cymbals, but a dummy snare and padded toms, so only the cymbals made noise. The takes were then blended together. The engineer, Eric Valentine, credited Grohl for his patience in the process, which he described as very difficult. In October 2001, while the album was being recorded, Grohl said Songs for the Deaf was his favorite album that he played drums on, which is a pretty impressive statement. Homme said the use of fake radio segments throughout the album, which you joked about having heard there at the end, gave it fluidity. with Oliveri saying that they were a jibe at how a lot of radio stations play the same thing over and over. We don't get played on the radio, so I figured we would talk shit about them. Of course, the irony here being that this album saw some of the most radio play of any of their previous albums or any album subsequent to this as well. So it was just ironic that that's the piss take that they were going for, and then lo and behold, for a while there, you couldn't turn on the radio and avoid any of the singles released off this album. In September of 2002, Hame explained the band's goals with the release of the album. I've been thinking of this album since the first album. Not necessarily the radio thing, but to me, that isn't the full concept. The full concept is the diversity of it all. I think we're supposed to be pushing buttons over the 3 records. I've always looked at our first 3 records as a set. The first one was to distance ourselves from Caius. The second album fanned out the music into different areas, and this one takes that out even a little further, I think. The album was planned for release on August 13th, 2002, but was postponed for 2 weeks. Grohl put Foo Fighters on hiatus and delayed their upcoming album One by One to October 2002 in order to tour for Songs for the Deaf. His first performance with the band was March 7th, 2002 at the Troubadour in Los Angeles, and his last was at the Fuji Rock Festival on July 28th. He returned to the Foo Fighters with Danzig drummer Joey Castillo announced as his replacement in August of 2002. Songs for the Deaf was Queens of the Stone Age breakout album and garnered the band international recognition. Upon its worldwide release in late August of 2002, the album peaked at number 17 on the Billboard 200 album chart. The album received critical acclaim and is often cited as the band's greatest album to date. On Metacritic, Songs for the Deaf is assigned a score of 89, indicating universal acclaim, making the album the 3rd highest rated on the site from 2002. Josh Tirangil of Entertainment Weekly called it the year's best hard rock album, giving it an A. Splendid, said the bottom line is the Queens of the Stone Age turns in another genre-demolishing, hard as titanium album in Songs for the Deaf. This is not your father's metal. It's better. Mojo listed the album as the year's 3rd best, and Cludge ranked it as number 6 on their list of the best albums of 2002. The NME placed the album at 6th best, with 3 singles each making the magazine's Tracks of the Year list over the course of 2002 and 2003. Kerrang rated the album at number 1 on its best albums of 2002 list. Music critic Steve Hyden called the album the greatest hard rock record of the 21st century. The album earned the band's first gold certification in the U.S., shifting over 500,000 copies. It was certified platinum in the UK on the 20th of September 2002, and sales exceeded 100,000 copies and went platinum in Canada. As of June 2007, the total amount of copies in the U.S. is estimated at nearly 1,200,000, according to the Nielsen SoundScan. I imagine that number is only much higher now. No One Knows was a chart success, becoming the band's first single to chart on the Billboard Hot 100 and their only single to top the U.S. alternative charts. The song was also critically acclaimed and received a nomination for Best Hard Rock Performance at the 2003 Grammy Awards. The album received 2 Best Hard Rock Performance Grammy nominations for singles No One Knows and Go With The Flow. To celebrate the 20th anniversary of its Hottest 100 poll, Australia radio station Triple J ran a Hottest 100 of the past 20 years poll in June of 2013. Songs that were released between 1994 and 2013 were eligible for the poll, and No One Knows was voted in the 11th position. So, these lyrics. We get some rules to follow. That and this, these and those. No one knows. We get these pills to swallow. How they stick in your throat. Tastes like gold. Oh, what you do to me. no one knows. And I realize you're mine. Indeed, a fool am I, and I realize you're mine. Indeed, a fool am I. I journey through the desert of the mind with no hope. I follow, I drift along the ocean, dead life boats in the sun, and come undone. Pleasantly caving in, I come undone. And I realize you're mine. Indeed, a fool am I, and I realize you're mine. Indeed, a fool am I. Heaven smiles above me. What a gift here below. But no one knows the gift that you give to me. No one knows. So, this track, co-written by Homme and Mark Lanegan, is widely considered a modern rock classic, praised for its driving drum performance by Dave Grohl, an iconic guitar riff, and the high-energy, dirty sound. While considered by many to be a perfect rock song, it was also seen as an unlikely radio hit due to its structure. No One Knows has received critical acclaim from critics. In the Guardian review for Songs for the Deaf, Dave Simpson said, "No One Knows has killer riffs to spare." Play Louder were similarly enthused, calling the song soulful, like the last gasp of the hero in an old Western. Eric Carr of Pitchfork Media, go ahead, John. Attaboy. Called it an easy groove and four to the floor slime of the highest quality. No One Knows was awarded the #1 position on Australian national radio station Triple J's annual Hottest 100 in 2002, with 4 other Queens of the Stone Age tracks also charting on the same list. The March 2005 edition of Q magazine placed it at the number 70 in its list of the 100 greatest guitar tracks, saying of the song, possibly the only full-on legs akimbo guitar great to be based around a rhythm that goes oompa oompa. Here, Josh Homme joined the ranks of the immortal. In September 2006, it was placed at number 13 on the Enemy's list of the 50 greatest tracks of the decade. Rolling Stone placed No One Knows at number 97 on their list of the 100 greatest guitar songs of all time, saying that the track, Queens of the Stone Age guitarist and overall mastermind Josh Homme found the sweet spot between hooky hard rock and pulverizing metal he'd grown up playing. The song was listed at number 11 on the 2002 Paz and Jop list, a survey of several hundred music critics conducted by our favorite, Robert Christgau. No One Knows was nominated for Best Hard Rock Performance at the 2003 Grammys, as mentioned before, and was the band's first, but they lost the award to Foo Fighters, All My Life, Irony at Work. In 2011, Enemy placed it at number 18 on its list, the 150 best tracks of the past 15 years. In 2013, BBC Six Music placed it at the number 16 spot on its Six Music's Greatest Hits, voted for by over 100,000 listeners. In 2014, The Enemy placed it at number 99 on its list of the 500 greatest songs of all time. And in 2016, Louder Sound ranked the song #1 on their list of the 10 greatest Queens of the Stone Age songs. And in 2021, Kerrang ranked the song #2 on their list of the 20 greatest Queens of the Stone Age tracks. So there you have it, John. Lots of, roses and adulation for this track and this album by Queens of the Stone Age as they firmly reached their apex here on Songs of the Deaf.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. Really, really good song. Really, really good album. And I got to mention again, I know that he's shown himself to be a bit of a prick at time. Well, all these guys have. Josh Homme certainly has. I think he kicked a photographer a few years ago who came to just photograph his performance. So yeah, he could be a bit of a dick. Great songwriter though. But to what I was saying, Dave Grohl, just on the fucking drums, man. He's one of my all-time. I know we've talked a lot about drummers over the last couple of months here on the channel, and he isn't my favorite, but he is up there. And it was fun to see him return to playing behind the kit after a bit of a drought of Grohl-less drum tracks on the FM band for all those years after Nirvana. So yeah. Really fun listen. I'm glad you liked it, John.
It is.
Excellent. Well, guys out there in the listening audience, please let us know what you thought of this track, No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age. If you've got any other tracks by them you would like us to check out on the album, please feel free to drop it down in the comments field below. As stated before and in previous episodes devoted to this band, I am going on a bit of a tour with these guys in chronological order, but that can't stop you guys from suggesting stuff that we can add for a future Friday episode. Also, please like, share, and or subscribe if you haven't done any or all of those things. It goes a long way to help us over here at the channel, and we really do appreciate it. And hopefully John and I will catch all y'all in growing numbers on the next episode of the Audiophiles. See you later, guys.